Well, guys, it's been a little while, and we are up to Psycho's Platters and a CD, episode 9. We're going to continue on with more of the signed albums that I happen to have acquired. Oh, I don't know, over the last 10 plus years. How convenient, though, that, excuse me, you know what I gotta go for. Coffee, that's right. And how appropriate considering it's, well, next month it'll be Christmas. And by the way, I hope everybody gets whatever they want for their Christmas wish list. If it was my Christmas wish list, it would be records and CDs and music books. The list would go from here to all the way to the end of my apartment and then some here. So here was an interesting thing, though. Okay. I was rummaging around, and this will be a good lesson for you guys too. I was rummaging around through a Salvation Army down here. I love Salvation Armies. Wherever you guys go to hunt for records, for example, down here I've got a couple Salvation Armies, Goodwills, there's a women's shelter, some charity resale shops, and sometimes there's little flea markets there here and there, you know, to be able to find some vinyl. Most of the time I don't seem to find too much lately, except I did come across some 45s, which I'll probably show maybe on my next show. We'll do it that way. But I was flipping through the albums, and while I managed to pick up a handful of Alan Parsons and ELO and some Andrew Gold, I came across this. Now, anybody that happens to like 50s doo-wop, like I do, the Platters, so you can see this whole thing, the Platters here on Antler Records, and I know you maybe don't quite get the reference, but you will in a second. The Platters have been around since the early 1950s. They were managed by a man named Buck Ram, who, if I remember correctly, died a couple of years ago. So there's been a lot of legal turmoil type shit, we'll say here, okay? The thing is that after 1960, there was not any original members of the five members of the Platters, okay? You had 4 guys and a girl. And the last one of the original Platters, Herb Reed, died, if I remember correctly, it was last year, early this year, something like that. So, just as a little warning, if you see a concert poster or whatever, and you're saying, hey, it's the Platters live, blah, 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 no, you're not going to get the real ones, okay? Because, well, they're all dead. But, okay, there has been up to, I am told, 50 different versions of the Platters around. Okay, so this here, I know you're saying, well, why the heck do you happen to have a Platters live album from 1977? We could care less about this. And you're probably right, I normally wouldn't. But I almost passed up this. Now, I know you can't quite see this, okay, but this is signed by all 5 members of this particular lineup. Now, I Googled, and I love Google, yes I do, to discover, because I was trying to figure out why one of the particular autographs, excuse me, here, Mr. Monroe Powell, why that name sounded familiar to me. So I Googled it and I discovered, okay, fine. He started out with the Platters in 1970 and sang with them all the way till 95, when then the lawsuit occurred. He still sings, believe it or not, except it's called Monroe Powell's Platters or something like that. But I discovered that, hey, you know, he was a member of the Ink Spots in the 1960s. But the problem with that also is that, well, the Ink Spots kind of stopped having any records with any original members or anything like that around after 1953-54, okay, because they were around in the 30s and 40s. I remember coming across a bunch of Ink Spot 78s on Decca, mostly, for old school. So I said, no, that's still not right. Why do I know Monroe Powell? And so I went and Googled some more and discovered that if you like doo-wop like I do, okay, I don't have a lot in my collection, but what I do have, I enjoy. It turned out that he actually was a member of the Dominoes, Billy Ward's band, which was called Billy Ward and the Dominoes, duh. And they had at one point or another Clyde McPhatter, okay? So, I mean, and Jackie Wilson, can't forget those two, right? I mean, they were like kings of R&B. So Monroe Powell, though, ended up being in the band from 1958 to 62 and actually was on a bunch of their Liberty and I want to say Decca releases. So, you know what? Out of all of that, I scored a doo-wop autograph. Not too shabby, I think. Okay. So that was my find for the week. You know, like I said, lesson learned. You never know what you're going to find at a resale shop. Look on the fronts and the backs of the albums, because I got to tell you, as soon as I find more of these things, I have a lot of back signed album covers, because for whatever reason, sometimes the cover, of course, would be too dark. Like this one, the Platters one here, is kind of pretty dark. You couldn't really see, you know, because most of it was pen up until like maybe the late 80s when the Sharpies started getting to be popular. So, you know, you have to look on the front and the back on some of these things. And that only cost me 50 cents, by the way. Not too shabby for cheap thrills. All right, let's do a little bit more here, okay? Other little things. Yeah, remember Leon? I keep coming up with some Leon. There's this little bit right there, okay? And of course, what was Leon's label for most of his his 70s output? Shelter, that's right. Beautiful, beautiful Shelter. Nice, clean condition on this one. This particular album he had a persona that he would record in sometimes. This happened to be from 1973. Hank Wilson's Back. Get it? Because of the back. Yeah, that's some pun. Volume 1. And, well, you know, I mean, he literally is singing Hank Williams. Okay, and then there's other ones here, too, like Battle of New Orleans, Goodnight Irene, the standard Weaver's Classic, stuff like that. Very nicely signed by Leon Russell. This is another one of those little resale shop finds. If you're into Christian music, and I am too, almost missed this. Russ Taff, okay? You're going to have to forgive me on this one. I want to say that he was a co-writer on some of the late 70s to mid-80s Christian rock hits. Yeah, I didn't have time to Google, guys, but point of the matter is, autograph in the corner, and no, I didn't slightly smudge it. That's how I found it. But the point of the matter is that I snagged it also for 50 cents. Okay, how about this one? As most of you people probably can figure out here, I like all kinds of music, swing all over the genre. Anything pretty much from the 50s to today is fair game to me, especially the stuff that I grew up on, okay? So take into example this next one that I happen to have real pleasure here. I got this one signed in front of me. And this is also going to be, I guess, a mini commercial too. Okay, if you've ever visited Branson, Missouri, all right, for many a year, they have had the Osmonds. Yeah, the Osmond brothers. You know the Osmond brothers. Yeah, they've been around actually since the early 1960s. Andy Williams helped to discover them, and God rest his soul, Andy. But point is that about 2 years ago, my son Mike and I had the pleasure of being able to go on an off night for me to go to the Osmonds Theater, which at that time was getting ready to get rebuilt. I think it's been remodeled now finally, or it's almost done or whatever. And so now this one, I'll have to admit, we went off and we paid, I think it was $10 or $20 total tacked on to the ticket, but that was for both of us, so it wasn't per person. I still thought it was pretty worth it to go meet them. And we ended up, in that particular show, it was Jay Osmond, Merrill Osmond, and Wayne Osmond were there. Jimmy was in Broadway at the time, and he owns the Osmond Theater. So I didn't have very many Osmond albums. This was almost ill-prepared. I gave my son the one with One Bad Apple. That's a good one. But then I found this particular album in a church resale shop back up in Illinois before I came down, and I said, you know, I never honestly heard of this album. Okay? The Plan. That's right. From 1974, I Googled it and found out a little bit more about this thing. Yeah, you see how they got the nice picture and all that. And the 3 autographs here. Let's see. Of course, it's on MGM. Now, I know that's not too big. You got your typical lyrics in here. Your back cover's a little weird. It's God's hand holding the world. Let's see. Now, produced by Alan Osmond. Alan, if I remember correctly, has had MS for quite some time. He's one of the few that does not perform anymore on the nice, lovely MGM swirl. You gotta like this. Really almost beautiful shape. There's one scratch on it, but it's still playable. The Osmonds tried to have a concept album in 1974, and anybody that knows about the history, you know, that they're Mormons, they have been for, well, gee, there's like several generations of them have been Mormons, even before these guys got to be big. And they wanted to do a hard rock album based on the history of the Book of Mormon. And I got to tell you, originally they went off and their managers and producers and everything, okay, went and said, this ain't going to sell. So they decided that they were going to go off, the label did, and sent out white test pressings of this album. There is some good hard rock stuff on there, believe it or not. I mean, harder than we're normally used to, from the Osmonds anyway. The DJs actually said, God, I like this. Is this some new group? And they came in white album covers. You had no clue. The only thing was a serial number, okay, so that they could identify that, yeah, it was the Osmonds. And so these DJs were playing the heck out of this album for a few weeks until, well, the Osmond camp people said, oh, guess what, it's the Osmonds. Well, within a day or two, all the radio stations stopped playing it. Yeah, that's right. Could have been a hit, wasn't a hit. In fact, it was Wayne Osmond, the one that likes to tell all the bad jokes. He's funny, though. He's a nice guy. He asked me how I got a hold of that album, because that's one of the few he claims that he rarely signs, and I said, 50 cents at the church resale shop. He said, boy, that's like 49 cents more than I would have paid for it. All right, guess what? We're going to go to another episode. Give me a few minutes, because I still have plenty of stuff. I miss you guys. I'll be back.